Happy holidays, everyone, and welcome to Art Block, the show where we talk about art and how it's made. I'm Spirit, your host, and today we'll be talking about the pros and cons of being a young artist. While you don't have to be any particular age to be an artist, I have noticed a lot of younger artists popping up with some absolutely amazing art. For those of you who are wondering, I'm counting this general range to be anywhere from about the age of 10 to 20, since that's around the time where a lot of younger artists start getting access to more extensive supplies when it comes to learning their craft. As someone who's still technically a young artist herself, there's a lot of pros and cons that I've discovered that comes with being a younger age. So sit back and relax, and let's get started. Pro number 1. Starting earlier. One of the biggest advantages of being a young artist is that you can start learning and improving upon your craft much earlier than, say, if you were in your 20s. This can actually be really helpful, especially if you're planning on going into an artistic field such as animation or illustration, because you'll already have a few years of experience that you can use on your application. Learning art while you're younger is also great because your mind is a lot more malleable and you'll be able to pick up techniques a lot faster than when you're older. When you're younger, you also have a chance to attend art class at school, or you might be lucky enough to at least find a mentor. This is great because you'll have access to some of the necessary supplies that can help you get off your feet in terms of your artistic skills. Heck, if you practice enough, you might even be able to reach the point where you can start making some money off of your art. Speaking of, let's move on to our next pro, commissions. Once you've reached the point where you think your art is good enough to start selling, you can start taking commissions. Making money off of commissions is not only a great way to save up, but can also be used as a form of experience if you're applying for college or you're setting up a resume. Now, you do have to be a bit careful when it comes to selling your art. I myself have been scammed quite a few times when it comes to being paid for my art, and you do need to be really careful as well when it comes to online interactions. I would personally recommend keeping your online presence on the down low until you're at least at the age of 16 or maybe 17, or at least whenever you have a better grasp of online safety and etiquette. Of course, that shouldn't stop you from taking commissions in real life, though it is a lot harder to get your work seen unless you have some form of online gallery or social media. This actually brings us to one of the cons of being a young artist, which is online presence. While this only applies to artists who post their artwork online, I need to stress that you need to be careful when it comes to posting your artwork to online galleries such as DeviantArt or Tumblr. This is for a few reasons really. For one, your art can be a lot more easily stolen if you don't know the proper protection procedures. Quite a few art hosting websites also require you to be of a certain age to be able to join. I should also point out that unless you watermark your work yourself, there's a very good chance that your artwork can be stolen if someone manages to hack into the system and steal the raw file. Another big one you need to be aware of is, especially if your art is really good, you will get a lot of attention. Applying your skills to a niche such as a particular fandom or topic can get a lot of eyes on your work, such as drawing My Little Pony fan art, Disney fan art, or drawing characters from the furry fandom. I know one of the big things a lot of younger people want is to be famous and have all the attention in the world, but this actually can backfire on you and make things even harder. Which brings us to another con, which is limited time. Anyone who has suffered through the standardized school system here in America probably knows just how much homework we get outside of the usual 30-hour work week. Build that up with extracurricular activities, keeping yourself healthy, and maintaining a social life, and 24 hours a day doesn't really seem like a lot of time. Of course, if your art is your extracurricular activity, then you might be able to have a couple hours a day to work on art, but if you have commissions and a bunch of other deadlines, it really starts to pile up. Especially when you have a large following to keep up with, it's hard to maintain a decent upload schedule while also keeping up with the other priorities. My recommendation on this part is to balance your time wisely and make sure that you are most importantly keeping up with your health. Oh, and speaking of health, pro number 3, art is really good for your health. Would you be surprised to hear that drawing an artwork is actually really good for your mental health? Making art or any form of creativity is usually a great way to not only relieve yourself of stress, but it also helps your brain wash out some of the toxins that have built up over the day. As someone who has a pretty high stress schedule, art has become somewhat of a must for me. If you're someone who has a high level of stress, I definitely recommend giving art a try. Granted, if you're newer at art, it can be a bit frustrating at first, but coming from someone who's been trying to make it into the god tier art schools, doing personal art is probably the closest thing to a day at the spa as I'm ever going to get. Not only that, but you'd be surprised how many calories you burn just by standing at an easel for a few hours. Of course, this can't be as easily applied with digital art, but if you're feeling like it, you could always just buy a standing desk. This does lead to another con, which is art is expensive. Art is a fairly expensive hobby. Granted, it's not the most expensive hobby, but traditional art in terms of materials is still pretty expensive, especially if you're working with something like Copic markers. This can be especially tricky to get around if you're younger and don't have a steady income that would allow you to keep buying supplies or paying for your program. To use an example, my Adobe Creative license is about $30 a month, and that's with a student discount. So 30 times 12 months a year, and you total to about $360 a year just for the art program. Luckily, if you're just making art and not doing videos and other projects like I am, you can probably do just as well with Sai or Krita. Another expense you'll need to keep in mind is your hardware, such as a tablet and computer. Luckily, your parents might be generous enough to buy you a tablet and everything if you ask for it for your birthday or Christmas. However, as I've said before, you do not need a tablet to create good art. Our next pro is making friends. One big thing that is great about being a young artist is that you'll have something to connect with people over when it comes to your skills. Especially if you're taking an art class or you make a lot of fan art, odds are someone in your age group also has a similar interest to you. In terms of an online presence, you'll also have a chance to meet some other people that not only share similar interests, but also may be able to share some of their experience with you. Honestly, if I hadn't joined the Secret Rift, I don't think I would have gotten anywhere near where I am today. Another advantage is that, especially when you're young, you're not exactly earning a lot of income, so when events such as birthdays, Christmas, or whatever comes around and you need something to give away, art is a surprisingly good way to go about making a custom, handmade gift. And lastly, my final pro to being a young artist is... you have an identity. I'm not kidding when I say this. Starting art when I was young has literally molded me into who I am today. Thanks to me learning how to draw and putting myself out there, I'm not only more confident in myself, but I also have an identity that I'm really proud of. Looking back at the past few years, despite having a lot of highs and lows, I can't say that I really regret becoming an artist or learning to draw. Especially when you're in the wild ride that is adolescence, having something consistent to anchor onto can be really helpful. In the least, you can sit there in your corner and be content while everyone else is still trying to figure stuff out. So to wrap up, while there are a lot of problems that come with being a young artist, I believe that the positives far outweigh the negatives. But I would like to hear from you, the lovely viewers. If you're a young artist, what are some of the struggles that you've come to deal with in your time as a creator? And even if you're not a young artist, I want to hear what you have to say on the topic. That's about it for today's show. If you liked what you saw and want to see more, make sure to subscribe and share this video around. It helps support me and it's practically free. Also be sure to check me out on Twitter and DeviantArt where I post artwork and chat with you guys outside of the show. Want to help out behind the scenes? Check me out on Patreon where for as little as $1 a month you can get access to resources and work in progresses of future projects. Thank you all for watching, I'm Spirit, and I'll see you next time.